like this. Been a while since you felt That's right. That's right. So my toes. It's been a while since you felt like this. It's been a while since you felt like this. Been a while since you felt like this.
Thanks very much, everybody. So I'm looking at my notes here, and the first line is, "Hi, everyone, I'm Lauren Benedict." Hi, everyone, I'm not Lauren Benedict. I'm here because, sadly, Lauren is sick. Lauren's in New York. Lauren knew she was not going to be able to make it when she couldn't get to the airport yesterday for her plane, so this is 24 hours notice. I'm on this deck. So I'd like you to, as you think about your feedback forms, I'd like you to bear that in mind. Be kind. You're a kind crowd. Keep it going. I'm going to rely on two things for this presentation. I'm going to rely on a really good data set the team have prepared that Lauren was going to present to you. And I'm going to rely on this really crude visual metaphor of you being talked to by an American expert. At 24 hours notice in London, this is as good as it gets. So Steph Curry, in some parts of the world, he's kind of a big deal. Let's see how this works. The last thing, it's slightly ironic. The title is looking at our study that I'm going to talk to you about. It's really lessons from the North American marketplace. To give you some context, Lauren is a 20-year media vet with very senior leadership positions at storage shops like Hulu, and way better placed to talk to you about this than a Brit. But here goes. In my limited defense, I did used to look after Mexico and Canada, and all of these are included in the study. So I think I should be able to get away with it. There are going to be three key themes to this presentation that we're going to be taking from this kind of lessons to North America. And because this is a very global group, and we've just been in the green room with people from all over the world, especially Finland, very proud of the fact they're not like America. What I am going to say is there are loads of differences. We're going to talk about some of the similarities. This is not saying everything is the same. What it is saying is there is an opportunity across a few things for us to learn lessons from North America. First off, it's this idea of linear and streaming. And probably when we get into this, you're going to see this idea that think of streaming as a distribution method. It's not like streaming kills what would have been linear television. Linear television's moved to being distributed through streaming, and we're going to take a look at that. The second piece, which when we went into COVID, everybody was subscribing to more and more SVOD opportunities. Those SVOD opportunities typically didn't have any ads in them. This worry that all of a sudden we weren't going to have any ads on TV. We're again going to show you that not only is that not the case, there's kind of a bunch of problems being created by the fact there's so many ads now on TV. And the third point is around the consumers. It's been brought up in a number of the presentations already. How do advertisers, agencies, media owners, and platforms really work to make advertising work for consumers? And we're going to show you really good examples of how that can happen. We're going to base a lot of this on a big study we do with Fuse Insights, 2,000 plus respondents every year. I think it's the 6th edition we're doing this on. from each of these markets, so more than 2,000 in the States, in Canada, in Mexico, in order to kind of bring to life some of these themes. And you can see here that, to my point, there's a bunch of differences in the way these markets have evolved. The cord cutting that kicked off in the US, very different to the prevalence of free-to-air TV in Mexico. The technology adoption, the time, the way it worked, BVOD in Canada going later than in other markets. There's a load of national differences that mean that we're not saying that there's a uniform nature of media in each of these markets. But what we are seeing is especially when we look at themes like AVOD and FAST, really strong adoption across the board. So let's take our first point, this idea that streamers are streaming linear and not just on demand. And just to bring it back to the UK, where I'm considerably more comfortable, in 2013, ThinkBox did a great study which was all about need states of TV viewing. And then they updated it again with the prevalence of video on demand, et cetera, in 2018. And if you look at some of the most popular need states, and somebody from the room from ThinkBox will doubtless keep me honest, but comfort, unwind, distract, those are three need states that actually in that 2018 study accounted, I think, for 60% of total TV viewing. They are really suited to people not making very active choices, or not very many of them. And things like linear environments, things like fast environments are really, really well suited. So let's have a look at what that looks like. Firstly, on this distribution point, we can see that streaming isn't emerging, it's established. Streaming is a distribution mechanism for TV content. Roku is predicated on this idea that all TV will be streamed. It's very much happening, and this is happening across the board. This is self-reported TV time. This will differ from official JIC measurements, et cetera. But when you look at the way consumers think about how they get their TV, it's really all about streaming. This idea that linear streaming, there's this difference in it, is gone. Think of streaming as the distribution method that really is going to be it in the very near future. And what that means is, in terms of that distribution method, the traditional linear TV is no longer a must-have for many TV streamers. Streaming and the access to content through streaming devices, whether that's a TV, a player, et cetera, is becoming the default for how this is now getting into their home. We see this in the States. 63% of people have cut the cord. In Canada, it's broadly half. And even in Mexico, catching up very, very fast with 4 in 10. But does that mean the viewing has changed? No, this isn't meant to be a viewing discussion, so we'll leave that to far more qualified people. But the traditional cable, that traditional linear experience is now happening. It's just happening through the guise, through the direction, through the hosting of streaming platforms. And again, that's happening across the board. When we looked at aggregating all of these responses back again, what we see is 44% of people enjoy turning on a TV channel and watching whatever's on. That ThinkBox research from now 7 years ago, more relevant now, I'd argue, than it even was then. And if you look at those markets, what does that mean? It means in Canada, people watching live sports on Crave, in Mexico, VIX and TV Azteca, in the States, Hulu Live, Pluto, etc. And they're not only watching new content. Lots of this is about the familiar, the comfortable, the known, and people. There's a host of media organizations with great content libraries that are pandering to exactly this point. And so this idea of rewatching is one of the trends that we're seeing across the board in each of these countries. They love the content, they love familiar shows, they love the classics, and it's true everywhere. And when we see that, one of the things that lends itself to for platforms is how do we sort of bring that behavior to bear? How do we reward that behavior through the discovery experience on the platforms, which we'll come on to now? And this is one of the reasons, this is one of the ways we think advertisers can get really involved in helping to reward consumers and help solve some of the problems around content discovery. Point 2, streamers are choosing to see ads. Again, if I go back to the start of COVID, everybody's very stressed about the fact that we wouldn't have ads on TV. Everybody's going to disappear off into subscription-only environments. You're going to end up with a bifurcated world with a huge amount of a very valuable audience, essentially unreachable on what we all know to be one of the most effective brand-building medias going. And actually, the market's developed differently. 90% of TV streamers in North America are using at least one service containing video advertising. And that's great news for the industry in general on exactly that point. We're not losing the big screen audience. Yes, it's changing. Yes, it's fragmenting. We're going to come on to that. But more than half of all of the streamers are using AVOD or FAST apps. 53% are using broadcaster apps, and 76% are using at least one SVOD service with an ad option in there as well. And so, again, there's a media planning nightmare to be overcome, etc. But the fundamental part of TV viewing and TV ad experiences is very much the same. So what does this look like in terms of time? Again, this is self-reported. This is looking at how consumers think about the way that they watch TV and the amount of time they're estimating they spend with ad-supported services on a weekly basis. You can see 15 hours in the States, 10 hours in Canada, 10 hours in Mexico. These are really good numbers for this opportunity to go reach people on the big screen. Meaningful, consistent, high attention viewing time, and there's a lot of it. And if we did this again in a year, we're going to see, my bet, I can't predict this, I am predicting this. I shouldn't predict this. It's going to be higher. And it's going to be higher because more and more people are having to balance the way that they look at their budgets, the way they look at the streaming options they have, the amazing amount of content coming out from even more subscription options. We're seeing that people are more inclined. There was some great data from Ampere from Richard yesterday just around the number of subscriptions that people have. We see when we look at the AVOD options, that level is way higher. So we're going to be seeing more and more of this in future. That fragmentation point, let's look at these ad-supported apps, ad-supported kind of streaming platforms. 9.3 in the States, 9.4 in Mexico, 4 in Canada, a little bit less. But this is the fragmentation point. This is the fact that some of these places are also very siloed in terms of their measurement, very siloed in terms of their output. They will only be looked at through their own criteria or accessible through their own trading platforms, etc. Really big stress for agencies and advertisers on how to reach effectively these audiences. What it means is that discovery, reach, consistency is harder. But what it doesn't mean is kind of ads on TV are going away. It is then incumbent on the platforms that are working with publishers that consumers are subscribing to do a really good job around this idea of simplifying access, simplifying discovery. How do we make this easier for viewers and for the advertising ecosystem that increasingly is funding streaming rather than just consumer subscriptions? And it's not just that fragmentation. It's not just happening at a kind of a platform level. Actually, when you look at within streamers' own portfolios, they continue to churn at a significant rate. So when we look at, we ask the question around how do you expect your consumption to change over time, 47% expect to change their streaming platform choices in the next 12 months. So whether that's upgrading, switching, downgrading, cancelling, resubscribing, adding more free, half the people across North America are expecting to shift. And for some people, but an increasingly small proportion, that'll be adding. For more, it'll be around swapping around their existing point to try and make their investments go further than they already are doing. And ad-supported options are a really good way to be able to go and do that. The what to watch, the discovery point, leading into the next piece we're going to talk about around advertising and how advertisers can really work to make the consumer experience better, is around the guidance on what to watch. Platforms like Roku have got a job to evolve our UIs, evolve the viewer experience to make this easy, because right now it isn't. You look at these times, between 12 and 15 minutes, the average amount of time being spent just trying to work out what to watch. Now, there'll always be the family fight about what to watch. You're never gonna be able to get rid of that. Maybe more TVs in the house so that your family members never see each other. This could be one of the ways this goes down. But fundamentally, a lot of it is because there's so much stuff out there and the discovery experiences still aren't what they need to be. So what can we go and do about that? Again, looking at the consumer perspective, 67%, two-thirds of people are saying there's too many streaming services to keep track of, and 50% of people say they don't even know the streaming service, the TV shows they are watching in the moment are even on. And so that's a problem, and there should be some really easy solves on that. So how do advertisers get involved in solving those problems for people? Well, one of the things we found in the survey is streamers really value ads that are useful. What does a useful ad in streaming really mean? Things like help me to find the stuff that I really enjoy and get me there quicker. That's one of them. Within Roku, a good example of this is the idea of branded destinations. This is one of the ones we did in, I think, Canada with McDonald's. 56% of people finding that promoted lists of content on their TV helping them to find what they want to watch, and a really good example of an advertiser being able to align itself with that goal in order to drive effectiveness for consumers. When we look at this idea of curated promoted playlists, using the home screen, that one really big aggregation point that still exists. When we talk about that fragmentation, one of the places everybody goes before the fragmentation happens, smart TV home screens. How can that be used better by advertisers? How can platforms use that better to provide more advertising opportunities in a way that's a good consumer experience rather than annoying? What we see is that there are ways of doing it. 71% of people agree that stuff that helps them find the content they're after is a very good thing. More than half say they'd appreciate a free movie or show sponsored by a brand. These are opportunities for brands to help solve a consumer problem in streaming. 3 in 4 streamers find interactive ads useful. There's a really big debate. I think outcomes, if I had £1 for every time the word outcome had been mentioned, I wouldn't be here anymore. How do we promote the opportunity for outcomes? How do we shorten funnels in TV? So not only can it be one of the best brand building mechanisms out there, it can also take a far more attributable part of the shortening of sales funnels across a number of different categories. And I'd say that not only Roku and some of the US organizations we're talking about in here, but even if you look at some of the work that ITV and Channel 4 have talked about in the last 24 hours, we're seeing this come to market, and we're seeing it come at the speed that is really promoted by the fact that we've got to get really, really into the battle against the other social platforms specifically that are really trying to corner the market on outcomes. So, a couple minutes left. And because it's Steph Curry, I'm going to finish with 3 points. Again, you can see how I spent my last 24 hours. I should have been learning this, but streamers are not just watching, they're not just watching kind of what we would talk as streaming content. It's about linear. It's about the broadcast content that people know and love. It's just being delivered differently. The consumption is evolving, or distribution, sorry, is evolving. The consumption patterns actually remain very, very predictable. Viewers are actively choosing ad-supported options, whether it be economics, whether it be the business models of the streamers themselves, whether it be just the kind of the way consumer behaviors are evolving. The ability to get ads onto the big screen is very much alive, well, and increasing. There's the opportunity to reach people. It's about the execution of how you go and do it. And when you go and do it, find utility. How can we move beyond just thinking of TV as reach? How can we move to a point where it's not about reaching audiences, it's about helping audiences? If we can get to that point, we're actually going to find that everybody wins. Platforms, content providers, advertisers, agencies, and the consumers themselves. All of the data and the white papers that we've written up for Canada and Mexico are available by scanning this QR code. Very much recommend people go do that. There's a wealth of far better, far more localized consideration and commentary around what I was meant to have been talking about today. Please do go to that one. And with that, thank you very much for your attention.